History isn't only dates and battles and crowns. It's a quiet, stubborn thread that threads through ordinary days, turning chance into meaning. Tonight, we're exploring 5 revolutionary lessons that feel like a soft revolution inside the heart, showing us that love can be born in the smallest moments and grow into something fearless, lasting, and true. Lesson 1: Small Acts, Loud Revolutions. Love grows where kindness lives. In a seaside town during the shadow of old empires, a young seamstress stitched more than gowns into the fabric of a city recovering from war. She kept a hidden tally of every small mercy. She offered a warm shawl for a cold neighbor, a repaired button for a stubborn tailor, a letter carried safely across the crowded market. Each act didn't roar, it whispered. And then a quiet healer, who had watched bodies mend and spirits falter, noticed. He started leaving little notes in the linen drawers of the shop, words of sympathy, jokes to lift a sour morning, a promise to share a cup of tea after the last stitch was finished for the day. Not grand declarations at first, just a willingness to be present, to show up when life was stiff with trouble. They learned that love does not demand fireworks to prove itself. It multiplies in the margins between the folds of fabric, in the careful handover of a repaired hem, in a shared glance across the street where the world is loud but your corner is calm. This is the first revolutionary lesson. Love is an uprising of small kindnesses, a daily decision to soften the rough edges of life rather than pounce on the perfect moment. When 2 people commit to showing up again and again, something fierce begins to grow, fierce in its gentleness, stubborn in its tenderness. Lesson 2: Time can bend toward trust. Patience is not passive, it's revolutionary faith. In a bustling gallery town of the late 19th century, a librarian and a gardener found themselves returning to the same bench beneath a chestnut tree, year after year, every spring louder than the last. They didn't rush into confession or grand weddings. They traded books and seeds, poems and weather reports, letting the seasons do the talking. She learned which books he liked by the way he teased the titles, and he learned how to coax a stubborn orchid to bloom by simply listening to her stories about people who fell in and out of love in streets lined with letters and longing. Patience, in this story, wasn't waiting for a perfect moment. It was choosing to cultivate a garden of small, honest exchanges, texts that said, "I'm here," notes tucked into a pocket, a hand offered across a table at the end of a long day. The leap came not as a thunderstorm but as a gentle tide, rising slowly, year after year, until trust could stand upright and true. The revolutionary truth here: love isn't a sprint. It's a sustainable revolution. A decision to keep tending what matters even when the world is loud and busy and unreliable. Lesson 3: Words can sculpt worlds. Honest talk is hard as architecture. In a sunlit corridor of a temple city, a scholar and a nurse discovered that the most powerful moments between 2 people were not fireworks, but conversations that cut through fear. They began by sharing stories of misread signals and long silences, then learned to name their own fears aloud: what they could lose, what they dreamed of, what they still believed about love despite the bruises life had given them. They practiced what they called the truth hour, a weekly ritual of speaking plainly, listening deeply, and refusing to pretend that anything less than truth could support a future. Words became tools for healing, gentle, precise, brave. They learned to replace blame with curiosity, to replace rumors with questions, to replace despair with shared plans. The romance that grew from this practice wasn't a sudden blaze. It was a fortress built with transparent bricks, sturdy enough to weather old wounds and new betrayals alike. The third revolutionary lesson asks us to choose honesty as a daily craft, to become architects of trust, speak with care, listen with the hunger to understand, and let words illuminate the path toward a future you both want to live in. Lesson 4: Healing is contagious when love is patient and true. across a heat-hazed desert city during a time of upheaval. A healer who tended wounded hearts and broken homes found a neighbor whose craft was resilience. Someone who mended broken traditions and rebuilt community with stubborn warmth. They learned that healing isn't only about mending a broken bone or a bruised ego. It's about restoring belief in what could be again. They began meeting in the small hours of night, sharing quiet cups, listening to the stories that refused to stay buried. She spoke of nightmares that haunted her sleep. He spoke of a future that would not forget what had happened yesterday. Together they discovered a rule of revival. Healing spreads when two people create a safe space for one another to be imperfect, to seek forgiveness, and to offer mercy. In their corner of the world, a ripple became a wave. Their love as tenderness lightweight heavy days. It lifted neighbors who carried grief like a stubborn stone in a shoe. The revolutionary insight here is simple yet radical: tenderness is not a luxury, it is infrastructure. A relationship built on mercy, patience, and shared healing can soften a city's weather and light the way for others to trust again. Lesson 5: when endings seem fixed, beginnings can still bloom. Hope is a stubborn star. The modern chapter of our history-bringing romance unfolds in a city where displacement and uncertainty press against the doors of possibility. Meet on a crowded bus as if drawn by gravity, two souls who have learned to recognize the ordinary. Miracles that stay when everything else. They don't pretend the road ahead is easy. They name the risks. They share the small daily rituals that anchor them: a phone call at dusk, a shared walk home, a nightly cup of tea where they talk about dreams that survived the day's disappointments. Their bond becomes their rebellion against the statistics of heartbreak. When a new job, a new city, or a sudden setback could have pulled them apart, they chose instead to co-create a narrative where they could grow side by side. They learned that endings aren't always sharp, dramatic blows. Sometimes endings arrive as soft fade-outs. And the courage to keep listening and choosing each other is what makes a new beginning possible. The final revolutionary truth: love is not a fairy tale with a fixed ending. It's a living project you nurture through seasons, recalibrating when life shifts, and returning again to each other's warmth when the world forgets to be kind. So here are the 5 lessons. Spoken as one long breath between history and romance: love grows in small, steady kindnesses, time can become trust. Honest words are the architecture of intimacy. Healing blooms most fully where tenderness is practiced. And even when the past seems unchangeable, love can press forward and birth a hopeful new chapter. If you've ever wondered whether the world you're living in today could host a story worth telling, consider these threads. Start with the smallest act you can offer: one genuine smile, one patient hour, nurture them with consistency and courage. And you'll see the revolution happen not in a moment, but in a lifetime. A lifetime of two hearts choosing each other, again and again, until the future feels less like a risk and more like a promise you are brave enough to keep. If you're ready to carry these lessons into your days, try 5 tiny rituals this week. 1. Perform one act of quiet kindness without. Hold a door, brew a cup for someone, leave a note of appreciation where it will be found. Then wait with patient curiosity, resisting the urge to fill every silence. 3. Practice a truth hour with yourself and someone you care about. Name a plan to protect what matters. 4. Invite healing into small corners: a shared tea, a listening ear, forgiveness offered and received. 5. When endings press in, choose a new chapter by saying yes to one shared dream. The bus hums to life and carries 2 strangers toward a softer dawn. A reminder that beginnings often arrive on ordinary wheels. They sit with their coffee cups steaming, letting the steam blur the world. And inside that gentle fog they practice what they learned. Speak first to what remains honest instead of what sounds easy. He tells a memory that could have stayed hidden. She names a fear she's carried since a youth of uncertain futures. And in naming, a bridge appears, not a grand archway but a measured mile, enough to walk together. A small ritual even the skeptics could love. When a worry returns, they pause, breathe, and decide what to do next, not what happened yesterday. The conversations become maps, with routes marked by listening, not by performance. They discover that healing isn't a spectacle, it's a rhythm. A shared breathing that steadies days when news grows loud and the heart grows tired. In that rhythm, the bond deepens. Not in loud fireworks but in a promise kept through ordinary hours. A breeze slips through an open window, carrying the scent of rain and possibility. And the two realize this is how a romance ages in patience, in mercy, in the quiet courage to stay. If you try these rituals, you won't wake to a dramatic unveiling. But you may wake to a steadier, sweeter sense that love is within reach again. And when fear whispers that endings are the end, you'll remember that beginnings can still bloom, right here, right now. In the space between two people choosing to stay. May your days be small revolutions, your nights soft compasses. And your future a shared horizon you both walk toward, again and again. Until the world believes in a